In this video I'll be discussing the editing process of creating the poster or the final poster for our horror film Fractured Illusions. So the first thing I did was begin by putting in our title, which was created by my partner, and I just put this text in by cropping it from the original JPEG file. Then I began to tint the background black, make the background completely black, so as that was the colour that we decided to go for the background. I did this by going into layer style and putting a colour overlay of black onto it. I then just began putting the tagline in, which is "It's in her reflection." I just got the text tool and put in the text. This wasn't the final font that we decided, but I just wanted to get the text on there so I knew kind of what layout I was working around. I began just putting it in random places to see what they look like, and then I put in a layer of just a picture of shattered glass. This is not the one that I ended up using, but I think it was important to try lots of different ones just to see how they looked and if they fitted well. I then decided to remove the background from the text as I hadn't done this yet. So I just got the magic wand tool, selected the black background of the text and deleted it. Yeah, that's what it looks like once it's been deleted. I was then just copying that, so copying that and then adding in the line. You can see on the N I've added in a line, so I did that by getting the box tool, creating a box, then filling that in red. And I did this because I received feedback from my teacher saying that the text wasn't as readable as it should be, and that might be a problem, so I just put those in to create a easier to read title. This is a picture that we ended up going for, but yeah, this is the second we tried. And yeah, I just put it in, and then I resized it and began working on the opacity level, seeing how clear I wanted it. The next thing I did was manipulate the picture of Sydney, which is used in the corner of the poster. I began by using the dots tool to lighten her skin a bit to make the shadows and the lighter areas have a more deeper contrast. And I did this on a lower opacity level of around 20 to 27, just so that it would look more natural. I also brightened the eyes and used the spot removal tool and healing tool to remove any blemishes. I then placed her onto the background and smoothed the edges with the smudge tool on a low opacity, on a low strength level, and used the blur tool to blur the edges out so it looked a little bit more natural. I then began moving her around and trying to put her in different places just to see what it looked like. I then inserted the image of the monster and went into blending options and just had a look at the opacity level and just experimenting with any other styles. I then put the two pictures on, and they were quite large here, but they became smaller later. But yes, I put the opacity level of both the pictures down, and also here I'm just like experimenting with where I wanted the text. This is when I made the pictures a little bit smaller. I then began putting in a picture of Animal in. I used the magic wand to get rid of the background, and yep, that's what's going on in that picture. In this one, I've lowered her opacity level and begun putting her into a piece of glass. I did this by putting her first under the layer of the glass and making both the glass layer and her have a lower opacity level so that both are showing. And I also used photo manipulation to work on her lighting and things like that. Here I'm just cutting out the edges of where the glass would stop to make sure that that is where it ended. I then just worked on the blending options for the monster, just worked on the colour overlay, added a dark overlay to it, and just trying to make it a bit more darker so it didn't show so much. Here I was making sure the glass that was on top of Sydney's face was actually shown, so I was darkening the areas in which that glass would create a shadow on her face. I did this by getting the burn tool and using a soft exposure around 30% to make sure it wasn't too harsh. I also did this for her hair and things like that. Also, you can see the edges of her hair are a bit rough, and I used a smudge tool to just smudge out a little bit. This is what the poster was looking at around halfway. I was looking at the monster's sides and like the edges, and I wasn't really happy with it, so I was just trying to work on how to make it blend in a bit more. Yeah, so I got rid of the sides and tried to blend the face into the background a bit more here. This is when I decided to put Sumaya's picture in, and you can see it in the bottom glass piece. She was on a very low opacity level here, and I was just working on the blending and trying to blend it back into the picture and get rid of any harsh edges. I experimented with cutting her face up a little bit to make it fit the glass, but I didn't actually end up sticking with this. It was just an experiment, and I did this by getting the lasso tool and cutting, making very small lines between her face and the background and just deleting that. But I made sure to duplicate the layer in order to experiment with one but then keep the original. So here I just was beginning to add in the little text. As you can see, it says filmed by Hibajan and Hannah TJ. I began adding that and also working a bit more on the monster's face. I darkened the title here because I felt it stuck out a little bit too much and looked a bit amateur, so I darkened it. I then blurred it further as I wanted it to differ from the magazine and trailer text, because I think it's important for them to have consistency but also be a little bit different. So I used the smudge tool and smudged it a little bit further. I then added in the small text which I got from another poster and had a look at what it said and copied a couple of the things from there, but obviously adding in our company header's house and, you know, production names. I just reworded mine and my partner's names a bit and then put the actors' names in there also. I got our production logo and was just cropping it and using the magic tool brush to put that in, and there you can see I've put it in. I've also put the R-rated sign, which is the American rating system, not the BBFC. I did this just in case if it was a worldwide poster it would have to apply to both America and the UK. I then put the monster's face in the middle just because I thought it might look a little bit better. I liked this a lot more because I think it didn't reveal so much of the monster's face, and I didn't want to give it away too much in the poster. So I made that face smaller and I kind of put it behind the glass just so it wasn't revealing too much and almost as if the glass was coming from its eyes. This is where I went back into Sumaya's face and put her up higher and made her picture a little bit bigger and just worked on the pastel levels, worked on the lighting, darkened little parts of where the glass was overlapping. That's what her face ended up looking like. I then darkened Sydney a bit so she was matching the rest. I didn't want her to look too bright compared to the rest of the actors on there. I also added a little bit of shading to her as well to give her a bit more definition. This is me putting in the 15 rating, which I just got from Online HD, and I resized it with the resizing tool and just placed it on the side, on the right hand edge of the poster. I changed the coming soon colour to red because I wanted to stick out a bit more, but it was a bit dark, so I think that needs further editing. I then just went back into Sydney and made her a little bit lighter, and then was working on where I wanted to put the placement of the text and if it was in the right spaces and everything like that. Then went back into Sydney's face and just worked on it a little bit more by adding with the sharpen tool, sharpening up her eyes a bit, and then also putting in a bit more of a contour to her face so that it didn't look so flat. and that's what I ended up looking at. Yep, that was the editing so far.